Hello, hello, hello. Today we're gonna talk about augmented reality. Now, if you do not know what that means, that's like you have something that you put over the world around yourself through some kind of a device. Usually, well, today, phone, smartphone. There were some glasses like Google glasses, HoloLens, and whatnot, trying to create a future with it. Magic Leap was one of the company as well that were like in headlines a few years ago, 2 years ago, and everybody knows about Pokemon Go, the game that was like almost everybody was playing it at one time, at least trying to see what that is. And here in Croatia, we have a company called Equinox. They are using this interesting also augmented reality that is like a local based. When I say local, not just in Croatia, you can actually, but it's like GPS based on a certain point in the city or wherever you want to put something interesting. And it doesn't mean that it's just like some kind of an image or a kind of a 3D object. It's actually even more a little bit interactive, and there are people already using this. So we're going to talk about this with the co-founder Ivan Voras of this amazing cool stuff, which I'm really fond of because I really like augmented reality. So let's see what's here, or might be here, or might be overlaid like a layer over the real world. Welcome to the StartUp Rant. Hello, hello, hello. We have Ivan on the line on the space, place, and image here right now. And he's not in the virtual space, but he's on the TV space right now. Well, on the TV, on the podcast, video podcast space. Hi, Ivan. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Nice to finally see you on the podcast.
Yeah, we did one before. I was guest on your podcast, and I was just audio, just sound,
Yeah.
no visual, which is interesting because you and I have a little this kind of a passion for augmented reality, which is like all uh, visual, right? Um, so Ivan is here today. He's going to talk, like I mentioned in the intro, he's going to talk about Equinox, his company for augmented reality, which is like I'm really big fan of that. I used some application before. I always wanted to work in that space, but I never had the chance. So it's really cool to see what Ivan and his startup is doing there. So why augmented reality, and maybe just like a little intro what actual augmented reality is to our listeners and viewers.
Well, let's start with what it is first. I think that will be a better explanation then. So, in my presentation, in my documents, I'd like to compare. Give the people three visual images, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Firstly, they have their user interfaces like whatever they use on the computers, like operating system, Windows, Macs, whatever. Then they have game interfaces, and those are especially first person shooters where everything is drawn, everything is three-dimensional, everything is a virtual content which is being presented on the screens on full screen, right? And then we have the third option, which is combining live feed, live video content with virtual content, with 3D content. And the first is like classical, common today's user interfaces. The second is like game interfaces, but also virtual reality, meaning that everything is drawn, everything is 3D multimedia presented to users, and everything they see in this virtual world is artificial, virtual. This is VR. And then the third thing which combines real video content, real feeds from cameras, from actual devices, and virtual content. This is augmented reality. This is AR. So why AR? Because it's an opportunity because we have found a niche. I mean, we have found what we think is the future of AR, and it wasn't addressed in the market already. AR is a cool thing. It's a cool technology, but it's not really a common technology yet because it is uh, it is created for augmented reality experiences are created for each specific person purpose, each specific campaign, each specific, like a museum or, a city tour or whatever else from scratch. And um, all those users of AR, meaning all those companies which have actually created AR experiences, have created their own apps from scratch. They have created their own systems of delivering content from scratch. And this is expensive, creating AR systems, creating AR apps from scratch for each specific campaign or marketing campaign or museum or tourism, city tours. It's both expensive and inefficient and bad on the users because they need to install apps anew in each new city and all of that. So to avoid all that or to make all of this much simpler, we have created a platform for creation and delivery of augmented reality content. And this isn't addressed in the market already. So this is our opportunity, and this is the opportunity for the big idea of augmented reality in real life.
Yeah, and I like that because it's kind of giving us space to play with to so many
Yes,
other people, companies who are maybe right now are seeing the advancement of augmented reality, but they do not see the way how to use that or to
exactly.
justify using that, right? I loved one of your posts on LinkedIn, and when you talked about like Roblox, which is interesting company, they have like these toys, but there is actually a game behind, and people, mainly children and young people, are playing with that. They're creating the worlds inside. It's kind of Minecraft, but it's like maybe even more. Um, I would say common among people, especially that age group, younger age group, but they're actually using that to learn to code, to learn to all kind of stuff. And I like how you put it there. You said like that Equinox could be Roblox, or actually is a Roblox in a way for augmented reality, because you are providing that knowledge, that information and whatnot on a palm of your hand, or well, on your screen. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that?
I really like what Roblox did with engaging young people to not only consume video games but also create video games. As far as I seen, children are creating games with each other, and those span from really simple games, which really are like maybe walkthroughs or like maybe visual stories, all the way to pretty complex stuff. And kids are motivated to do this because for the first time they can create their own worlds with tools which are reasonably easy to use. Maybe they're not as easy as they can be. The company probably is aware of that and will probably work on that. But for the first time, people are able to create virtual worlds and play in them and collaborate on them. And this is the aspect which I really, really like. And this is the aspect which I really, really want to translate into AR. We are building the tools, we are building the platform, which can be used to create virtual worlds, to create augmented worlds, meaning, place virtual content in real world situations, make them interactive, make the content do something, right? And we are offering that not only for game space, not only for the games industry, but also for all the others or the other uses of AR which are possible, which can enrich people's lives. From marketing campaigns, we really want to create user experiences like Darth Vader, the guy from Star Wars, walking down the city center and selling you tickets to movies, those kind of things. This is AR in the context of marketing or sales. Um, in the same in the same way, and we can also do, instead of people searching for Pokemons around the city, they can search for a certain, maybe branded content, or they can find certain um, historical landmarks and engage with them, interact with this content as they would with a game. So gamification is a large part of what we do. And young generations have already grown up by playing games the whole lives, right? From from the youngest ages, those kids are using mobile phones with 3D capabilities. They are playing online games. They're interacting with virtual worlds, and they will soon expect the real world to also respond in a interactive and virtual way. So the technology is currently limited to mobile phones, but it is also coming along with other more convenient devices.
And this is interesting because right now it is mostly uh, confined to the mobile phones. Like, people take this, go around, chase Pokemon, or they try to scan something and get information about that. But in a few years back, well, actually a year or two back, there was a big announcements from the big companies, like from the Microsoft with the HoloLens, from and we are not just talking about the VR, but actually about AR or XR even, with the Apple, with their glasses, Google Google Glass. Well, that's an application, but they had like these kind of glasses, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and I think that right now all this kind of talk about that was a little bit uh, uh, shifted to something else, because um, there's kind of, I would say, actually lacking news on in this department, right? Also, Magic Leap, the huge company that people were
Yeah,
talking about
yeah.
when we are talking about startups who are in the AR space, they were like the biggest, like look at that, if they gathered all that kind of money. But actually the CEO of that company went and he started a new company a few days ago, which is interesting. But they're still here, they're actually producing the software and the hardware, um, and there are collaboration tools to do this. And what you are doing, which is interesting for me, because I'm always like, there's these kind of huge companies that can do this, but there's little companies, little startups that can do this as well and provide this to, I wouldn't say like underdogs, but like to ordinary people, maybe just to play with it, like I just like 3D. It's like there's Maya, there's this, but there's Blender 3D, right? And you can actually play and try to do that. Was it difficult to embark, like to say, I'm gonna set sail into this kind of a space and do this while I know, like you've probably read those news, right? There is like these big companies doing this. Was it difficult to do that?
Um, Starting anything is somewhat difficult. Depends on what it is. So yeah, there's always thoughts of that. But on the other hand, you know, it's a chicken and the egg problem on the technology level globally in the AR space. So people will probably get more interested in AR when there's more content and more experiences to actually use in AR. On the other hand, hardware and software manufacturer will get on with the program when there's demand from the users, and so something needs to happen to actually reconcile or move things forward. I see our company with moving forward the side which creates content, right? So we are not producing hardware, we are not producing base software like operating systems or
Mm-hmm.
frameworks or libraries to create apps. We are on the side which creates content and which engages people with this content. So our primary goal is to spread our primary goal is to reach users, to reach people with the idea that AR is actually achievable and is achievable reasonably cheaply, because while AR obviously exists without us, we are here to make it more accessible, more easy to create, and also much cheaper to create. Instead of instead of embarking on huge projects which create whole AR system from scratch, companies can concentrate on creating content, right, and leave the other things to us. So this is an important aspect. So the hope is that by working on the content creations and content delivery side, we will also help the whole ecosystem rise and uh,
Mhm.
be strongly represented in the mindshare of users.
And I really like you mentioned like this creative content. I'm like a creative mind, right? So I'm just thinking like imagine that I'm like a teacher or geography teacher or maybe right now. Okay, so to our listeners and to everybody who's listening to us, they're not from Croatia. They need to know that we are here in Croatia had, especially in Zagreb and the surrounding area, lots of earthquakes. And imagine right now trying to explain that to kids or something like that. But actually, with the AR, if you like, right now, some buildings are damaged and some buildings are historical from the history, really old buildings. So you can actually combine that as a teacher, as a geography teacher, as a history teacher, and put that in the perspective, like how it was, what can be done, and in a way overlay that in this AR space, which is like really creative stuff that you can do with your Equinox, with your application, and you don't need a complicated hardware, you don't need a complicated software, or just do some kind of exhibition in the city or in the space place wherever you want to. And that's I really like about what you're doing right now. Are people using this right now? Are people creating stuff in the creatively or non-creatively? There are always people who will just say, "Oh man, can just draw a little, profanity or whatnot
Yeah, for sure.
in the AR."
Uh,
You know how it
that's
goes when you learn some kind of a language. You also go with the easier stuff. So
yeah, we have really positive feedback. We have engaged with several artists, and this is really excellent stuff for us. There are both 2D and 3D artists, so we can place 2D content which appears either as standalone, images floating in the air, which is kind of not so interactive or not so gamified as it can be, or combined with various 3D characters or 3D models which literally carry such images in like flags or something. So we had people, and this is actually really nice for me to see, experimenting with what they can do in AR. So one of the artists soon figured out that they can upload transparent images, right? And uploading by having transparent images in AR, those behave like masks, or they can place other people.
masks. What are masks? People use masks.
Yeah, especially in these times.
Yeah.
But masks in like a graphical
Cool.
way. So in a graphical uh, jargon. So you know it was one thing that everybody picks up really soon is that they can view AR through their mobile phones and then tell their friends to go a few paces in front and turn to that side or that side, and they can take images of their friends like interacting with virtual content. So this is something which everybody picks up really soon. Um, we had a big project in this Christmas time, which was not as big as it could have been because of both the pandemic and earthquakes which happened in Croatia, which have severely limited funds we could allocate, or our clients could allocate, to the whole project. But we did manage to place virtual content, 3D content representing like old style, old city, uh, basically windows. And those I can really, I can send you a link, or you can we include it in the links in show notes.
Yeah, it will
So
be. We will. I would really invite you to send me that link. I saw that. I want that to show to people around the world because it was beautiful in a way that you can actually have this kind of um, window to the other world, like fairy tale almost.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you're,
it's basically fairy tale content.
yeah,
So
it's
really
beautiful.
artistically drawn windows, and those started as 2D drawings, by uh, uh, very good 2D graphical artist in Croatia. And we took those, we basically extruded them in the third dimensions and animated those windows. And those windows, I like, imagine a building, an old style European building, and a window of such a building, and there are usually a couple of people leaning from those windows, and you can see a bit of what is happening in the room behind the window, and it was all done in like a Christmas time decorations, and it's really artistic and really beautiful. So you can manage to place those windows across the country, in like 20 cities across the country, and also in neighboring countries. So what we do is, when I say place, what we do is location based AR primarily. We can do other kinds of AR, but kind of our specialty for now is location based AR, or in other words, GPS triggered AR. So if you are in those kind of places where there's content, you can see this content interacting with the real world. You can see this virtual content in a city square or in a park, approximately where we placed it, because GPS is always kind of fuzzy in this placement, but approximately where we placed it, and you can see it interacting with the environments, with either the city blocks, buildings, or trees in the park, and it's kind of it really is kind of like a fairy tale content.
And I know that some people who are now listening to this or watching this, they probably said like, he said those mask overlaying stuff. He's now talking about buildings and kind of images that can be. But people are already doing this in a, kind of Instagram and whatnot. And I just love this because people will not think of this like the first thing, but the actual that those big companies are right now kind of are doing a favor to you, because people are now more inclined to do explore and see AR because they're already doing it in those big companies and big applications, but they don't have like that kind of a pace of, I would say, of creativity that can people actually can now take and say, okay, I can do something there. I can see how that looks like, but now I can actually play with it. I can send this to my friends. And as you mentioned this, and this is beautiful because Zagreb was like 3 years in a row was the best Christmas visitation site, and now due to the pandemic and to the request, people couldn't come here. But if they come here, even in this limited options that they have of traveling or staying or visiting restaurants or whatnot, right now it's all locked down, but they still can walk around town and they can actually experience something through your app that they cannot experience anywhere. It's actually collaboration of artists and creative minds and software in this matter to bring that joy during the
Yeah.
was during the Christmas. And also I think that it will be interesting to see something in the future. There is Valentine's Day coming, there was summer coming, spring coming. There are all kind of stuff that can be done, especially in Zagreb. Those big eggs for Easter. I can now see them through application. What could be happening, like people walking around them and interacting and saying that to their friends. It's beautiful. I'm ranting a little bit about your application because I really like it. I actually have one image. I need to post that. Interacting with one of yours 3D masterpieces in AR is beautiful. You actually took the picture, right?
Um, so this is also kind of what we found, and this is completely natural, is that people, or especially business people, still need to learn what they can actually do through AR, because it's kind of new, it's kind of exciting, But in this example of this project with virtual all town windows, we have seen that they still think of AR as something which is reasonably or relatively static. Like there's a 3D model there, it's doing its stuff, it's animated, it looks beautiful, but it's something which is used, something which is being observed, something which is being looked at as an art object. Not something which is gamified, not something which is interactive, not something which has the potential to to make an offer to the user to for an upsell, or to direct the user to another location. This kind of stuff is going to be especially attractive to the younger generations, but you also need to educate the older generation that this is even possible to do.
Yeah, I listen. I love my. I have a like 2.5 years toddler, right? And he likes to, when we cannot get him to eat something, then we put him a YouTube video or something, right? But the kid now knows that he's watching the video and there's like those commercials or something, so he just clicks on it, right? So when you put a YouTube video on the television, right, and there's this button that says like, he doesn't go for a remote, right? He just goes there and he clicks the TV, like, bam, and
Yeah.
no, like you're gonna turn. What I want to say is, right now, something that's like normal for the kids. It's hard to understand for grown-ups, and the same thing is here. Like you said, like I love AR not because I just scan something and there is a big
Yeah.
Michelangelo statue in my apartment. So what now? Nothing, like, but when you have this AR that you can interact with, that you can actually
Yeah.
follow the story that it's telling, and that's why I love those windows, because it's not a window. How to explain this to people, especially those who are listening? You need to see this. There will be a link. You need to click on that. It's not like window here and like in front of you and you look at it. It's actually, you can look from the different um, perspective of what's happening inside. That was like really interesting for me because it's utilizing all the sensor motions and everything that right now we have access to, and that's beautiful. But this is also a startup rant because we're not just ranting about the augmented reality, but we're now going to rant about startup. I did mention, and you did
Yeah.
answer, how it's hard to get into this business and space and even to start working something. But you also have a podcast and you talk with other companies. Uh, you're a really busy man, so I don't know how much do you have in your life, but running a startup is not easy. And from your experience, uh, are startups in Croatia prepared for what's happening in the startup world, um, or they just go blindly into it?
I think that most are really not prepared, but I think that it's a similar situation pretty much all over the world. The few people which are actually aware of how things are being done and what to expect during the course of creating a business and scaling this business and make it actually work on the market. There are also a lot of people who think that startups are basically like vessels for creating some ideas, or for inventors to bring something to markets, and without a
Mm.
business plan behind it. And hopefully a lot of those are learning really quickly, and just making peace with the brutal reality in some way. uh, I had, you know, I was one of or our startup was the first generation of basically the first actual real life VC operating in Croatia.
Mm-hmm.
As
Okay.
strange as this may seem to someone in 2021, but this is really this whole country and this whole area is a bit stagnant in some ways. So one of the things that um, they try to really make a point about is that startups are not about ideas. Startups are about making a business work, right? So if you have an idea and you think it's great, if you have an invention, if you have something which you think that nobody in the world has thought about, you're much better off selling this idea or a patent or whatever to a big company which can actually make a business out of it than trying to create a business yourself. It will be much more easier to do. You will get a reasonable amount of money out of it. It's just the better way to do it in this particular case. If, on the other hand, you actually have either a passion or a curiosity or a drive to create a business, to create a company from more or less scratch, and then invest your time and learn a whole lot of things while you do it, then you're probably good to go in creating a startup, right? Creating something yourself and starting a business from scratch. Um,
Mm.
Croatia, and I think that you agree, most of Europe is a bit lacking or lagging behind, obviously, Silicon Valley and more developed markets. So, there are a whole lot of problems which are not really present in developed markets, such as access to capital, such as access to people. You know, um, it's really hard to find someone locally who has been to the same things that you have been, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you need to either search far and wide and pick people who are actually um, living the life and not just talking about it, right? Or you
Hmm.
turn to the outside world and you pick up tips and advice and people internationally, which is basically what most of us are doing.
And it's interesting for me, like what you just said, like you pick up what other people are doing internationally, what they're doing, and there is like kind of a stuff there that's normal. It's like you start a startup, you fail, and then after 7 you create Uber, right? But in Croatia, it's a little bit different. It's like, oh, you failed. Oh no. But actually, the process of learning something from it is, I think, really beneficial, right? Not to be afraid of failing, that's another thing. And when you go over that, of the startups that failed. Now I mentioned this because you did had startups, companies, and you are in this space and place with that podcast that you can actually know about all kind of stuff here in Croatia. Are there startups that are like failing or failed, but people from them rise to occasion and created something new, or were there startups who were so afraid that to do something here in Croatia, but after they managed to do something out in the world? Because sometimes it's easier, how crazy that sounds, but we have Infobip, we have all these kind of cool startups that are actually faring much better, and Crow team, or making
Yeah,
games, and people in Croatia didn't know that they're from Croatia, for example, like
yeah.
huge companies. So a little bit about that. What are your experience with that? What did you see here? No.
It's getting better. It's getting better fast. There are more and more people who have actually, tried something, learned something, failed something, and then started anew. And it's actually a good thing because they can use their experiences, their contexts, much more important. For example, their contexts to create
Yeah.
something new. By leveraging existing assets. Existing um, things they learned and content they had. So the whole climate, as you said, there are a lot of companies from Croatia which are really not exposed in Croatia in the media or in such ways until something happens. Either they go bust or they got some
Yeah.
investment, or they buy something or something, and then there's a couple of days of commentary and such, and then there's business as usual. So Croatia is advancing. There are more and more companies, more and more startups which are succeeding, and this is really great. The games industry is, for example, a huge boom, for Croatia, and there's a lot of talented both developers and artists and also business people who have experience in this industry currently. This is really great. I mean, if somebody asked you 10 years ago or 15 years ago, Uh, would game development be something that Croatia could be known for? I think that probably you will agree that it was
Yeah,
not highly likely.
yeah.
It was not likely.
It
Yeah,
was tourism all the time, tourism, tourism,
yeah,
tourism. And right now, when we see that we cannot just depend on people coming here and enjoy our beautiful sea shores and inland, uh, uh, there is actually business booming right now with the technology with the game. You mentioned about the VC, and you mentioned how there was investment and there was like support from them. How hard is to get that? Is it like how people sometimes think, oh yeah, there was a kind of VC, there was just shelling out the money and you just go there and say, hi, I have an idea, here you go, or is it a little bit I need to prepare for this. How that goes. I know because I'm in the same
yeah.
like as a startup owner, but it's always fun to explain to people who are not in that space, like it's not just like you go to the shopping and take a shopping cart and just big piles of money and bring home. It's not like that.
Especially here. Maybe
Yeah.
there are a couple places on the earth where
I don't
when
know.
it's different, but definitely not here. I mean, I am really, kind of both surprised and envious about situation in cities like London, right? Where
Yeah.
I've been to Shoreditch, I've been to those places where there's a huge concentration of tech companies, and they have literally been placing posters on streets, on street corners, saying a pitch competition for some bizarre kind of industry is happening tomorrow at 5 o'clock, or whatever. And those are really niches. I saw one such ad, and there was a lot of them, advertising for a pitch competition for wedding software. This is really
Okay.
really niche, and
Yeah.
I kind of believe that in such areas, even those kind of events are really crowded, right? So it's not just let's have a general pitching event. It's really 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 small niche, and it's also addressed, and it's all.
Amazing. Amazing.
So in Croatia, yeah, money doesn't fall from the sky, and this is why most companies will eventually need to go outside and search external funding. Even now, we are probably on this route already. So people really need to also realize that uh, having an excellent idea is at most just a tiny fraction of a first step, right? Even if you do have an excellent idea, and most ideas is just statistics, are not even great. They are maybe good or less. Even if you have an excellent idea, first you will need to convince people that really is an excellent idea. Secondly, you will need to convince the right people. Not just average Joes, but VCs who have
Yeah.
seen thousands of pitches during their professional life. Thirdly, you will need to, especially on a personal level, connect with some of those which are relevant to your industry. Pitching events, in my experience, are next to useless for startups if they are general. There are couple of pan-European pitching events going around, and those kind of events really solicit any kinds of startups and invite any kind of investors, and those are excellent for learning how to pitch,
Yeah.
but
Go and
really
practice. Go and
next to useless.
practice.
Yeah, for practicing. They are next to useless for actually raising money. So first the tiny fraction of the first step is the idea. Then you need to convince somebody that the idea is actually good, which is much harder than it sounds. And then you need to find the right people to actually connect to.
Excellent. Thank you for this because it's really good to hear from somebody who is a startup founder, somebody who went through, but is actually doing something so cool, so unique that somebody could think like, okay, I have a unique idea, but there is this guy saying this all kind of stuff that I maybe need to go back right now and read something a little bit more before I just go out there and start, you know, talking and trying to raise money. But in the other hand, it's also important to do that in a way to test the idea, what you have, what my startup that I'm a co-founder is like. If I didn't talk with the people, I didn't show that to somebody, and then they try that and say, okay, this is really cool, you can work on that, nothing would happen. But when something is to happen, you need to work on that. So thank you for being guest here. Do you have any kind of special advice, anything that you want to like right now promote? Because you said right now, and I heard that maybe you're going outside right now is trying to raise more money. Now it's the time. You like pitching, like I'm just joking. Like, do you have any advices for people and everybody of our listeners and viewers right now that you want to share?
Well, on the other hand, even if I did say that, it's relatively hard to do, and there are a lot of things that can go wrong and usually do go wrong, and it's hard to find people of all profiles, either partners or VCs or employees. It's still worth it, So if you think that you do have a great idea, and if you do think that this is something which will actually be useful to people, meaning that they will pay money for it,
Mm,
then
yeah.
absolutely go for it. You will need to learn a lot about both running a business and at the same time about communicating with people, and at the same time about pitching ideas to other people, and at the same time receiving feedback for all those things, ideas and pitches, and everything else, and at the same time work on your product. So
Yeah.
multitasking is also something that you will learn, but it's worth it. It is worth it. So yeah, go for it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ivan, for being guest today. We'll talk again soon, I hope, about all other kind of stuff, because I'm gonna hear in one of the future shows a little bit more about your own podcast and what's happening with the Equinox, of course. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.